Welcome back on this Monday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio with you, and the voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, joins us, brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant, where each Wednesday night at 7:05 you can find Inside Indiana with Coach Tom Allen and Fish hosting right there. Don, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Good. I hope that you're staying in great shape and keeping the heart up, because I started to try to find a catchy name for this team, the Cardiac Hoosiers, but that doesn't go very well. But, man, they have certainly been giving everyone a cardiac challenge at the end of these games.
Well, that's the good news, because prior to the end of the ball games, it's been a challenge just to stay upbeat about how they're playing.
Or stay up.
I mean, it's been an interesting 3 ball games, to say the least. And I think we're all in the same boat here. We all don't know what we can actually think about this football team at this point. I guess the one thing you can say, and truly is a positive, has been how tough they've been at the end of ball games, how much confidence they must have in their ability to play and get things done at the end of ball games. A great part of that has to do with Connor Bazelak's calmness and his ability to run this offense, especially when the game is on the line. He showed that twice now out of 3 ball games, and actually you could say he did the same thing after playing horribly in the first half against Idaho, and then he goes 10 for 12 in the third quarter, and Indiana scores 29 points with no answer from Idaho at that point. So all I can say at this juncture about this football team is they make it exciting, and it's great for broadcasts.
I can admit. Now, one good thing I did say is I'm not accustomed to seeing an Indiana team do this, to be able to do what they did against Illinois, to do what they did against Western, those final drives, and to finish them off. Usually there's a call, there's a play, there's always something, whatever. But okay, I'm like, well, who knows? It's going their way. Maybe that's good news going forward. But the bad news is the schedule is going to get much stiffer, and that starts this next week with the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Well, Cincinnati is going to be their toughest test by far to date. Cincinnati gave Arkansas a ranked team in the top 25 at the first game of the year, played them to a touchdown. Actually could have won the game based on what I've been told.
Should have won the game. Yeah. They beat themselves.
So and apparently against Miami this past week, again they had the penalty problems and made some mistakes that were very costly, and yet they were able to win the game going away at the end, even though they got down early. I guess they gave up a fumble, and I can't remember what else they did, but they struggled a little bit, turned the ball over. So, but Cincinnati's a team that, well, they make the playoffs last year, so it tells you all you need to know. Yeah, they graduated a bunch of guys, and a bunch of guys went to the NFL from their program, but they just retooled. They haven't had to rebuild. Luke Fickell has done a remarkable job there of building the Cincinnati program into a power, and they showed that last year. And in my opinion, they've showed that in the first 3 games this year. So this is going to be a huge challenge for this Indiana football team, and it's going to take Indiana's easily their best performance of the year to win it.
And Don, I look back to the 2019 season, and you look at Indiana this year and 2019 Minnesota. The way that team won some games, they had to scratch and claw and fight to beat South Dakota State, Fresno State, and Georgia Southern. That team went on to win 11 ball games. I'm not saying Indiana's an 11-win team this year, but I think that even though the competition has not been great, I think there is something to be said for the way they are winning ball games. To look at the scoreboard, to trail Western Kentucky by a couple touchdowns, to trail Illinois and not have the offense move all game, to play so poorly in the first half against Idaho, to have that sort of camaraderie and that team chemistry to fight against all odds. In my opinion, the football maybe doesn't look great at all times for a full 60 minutes, but I think there is something to be said for how they are coming together in the critical moments of these football games and finding 3 wins.
There's no question. I think that's the most encouraging thing about this football team is the mental frame of mind that they've got. And you got to give Tom Allen credit for that. Tom Allen and the coaching staff have gotten these guys believing that, hey, it doesn't matter what the score is, we've got a chance, and we can win. They've proven to themselves they can win. That is probably as important a thing as anything about any team. You got to have that belief. You got to believe you can get it done. And then to prove it to yourself just enhances that belief and that confidence level. So right now, I think this team is riding high in that vein. But Cincinnati is going to be a challenge that will dictate one way or the other just where they're going to go the next couple of ball games, because I think they can beat Cincinnati. I think they can beat Nebraska. Those are 5 straight wins if they get them to go into the rest of the Big Ten season. You're 1 game away from bowl eligibility already. And not that that's the ultimate goal, because the ultimate goal is to win a Big Ten championship, but you can't get there until you win. And you've got to win. We've won 3 in a row. I mean, that's the most important factor involved in this season at this point is the record. 3-0 at this juncture, and nobody thought they'd be 3-0, or probably very few people thought they'd be 3-0 at this point.
Another thing, Don, I agree with you absolutely. Not after starting the season with a conference team, but 12 receivers caught a ball in this game. 12. That I can't tell people how that's a large number to even target that many guys. But you had people like James Bamba catch their first pass ever in a collegiate game. Aaron Steinfeld catching his first catch in a collegiate game as freshman. But from Cam Camper to DJ Matthews, Emory Simmons, even getting the running backs and Donovan McCulley involved, it was nice to see Josh Henderson. And Josh Henderson is quickly becoming, to me, the feature back for Indiana. But the receiving, the fact that you have that many targets to throw to, that gives Indiana a little bit to play with.
Well, there's no question. I still question the run game because of the offensive line. That's where I think this team is vulnerable, if there is such a thing as vulnerability on the offense right now. I think the passing game has been phenomenal. I mean, Baselak has been tremendous. I mean, you can say what you want to about the first half of the Idaho ball game, and he couldn't find, but the rain and all that kind of thing probably had something to do with that. And granted, it's like that for both teams, and I understand all those excuses and reasons and all those kind of thing. But the fact that he came back in the second half and goes 10 for 12 leads this team on a 29 straight point run before they gave up a couple easy touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But they won that ball game going away. They dominated the second half of that contest. I really feel good about the passing game, but you got to have some balance. You've got to be able to run the football. And they were able to do that this past week against a lesser offensive or defensive line than Indiana's going to face on Saturday. Cincinnati's going to test this team, in my opinion, in every way that they haven't been tested up to this point. And that's going to be the challenge.
Well, and I just wanted to ask Don, because I look at how poorly this team ran the football last season, and it hasn't been great so far this season. I mean, I know they ran the ball really well against Idaho, as they should, but you look at the stat column, it's not great. 120 yards, 3.4 yards per carry. I think with Walt Bell's extension of the run game, those bubble screens, getting the ball out of Connor Baselak's hands, do you think that is good enough to win some Big Ten football games? It's not a great stat line, admittedly, but I think it's just enough of a threat to where, as you were just saying, it at least gives them some sort of balance where you have to plan for it.
You have to. That's the key. Yeah, be able to run the football as effectively as you need to run it.
Yeah,
is that keeps everybody a little bit more honest, because if all you can do is pass the ball, they're going to figure that out. And trust me, the Big Ten teams, they've all got the personnel to figure it out and stop it. So they've got to be able to run it somewhat effectively. It don't have to be perfect, but they've got to be able to have a threat there. And I think Shivers gives them the big play threat because of his speed, his quickness, and his ability to shift and move. Henderson's a little bit more the power back, it looks like to me at this point. And I really liked what I saw from him this past week. And he also he's a guy who can break tackles, and he does a really good job of that. He showed that this past week, I thought, with his running ability. So I don't know if he's going to be the feature back, but I guarantee you this, he's going to be a factor if he stays healthy. And that's the whole thing with this whole football team right now. Health is really critical for this ball club. Bamba, I don't know what his status is. We'll find out probably more today about his injury, if it was that serious or not. I hope not. But they've been pretty injury-free up to this point, too. That's really helped them as well. So at this juncture, all you really need to know is that Indiana's 3-0.
Yeah.
And everybody's excited about that aspect of it. They're just not as excited about what they think about this football team right now, because they've put themselves into pretty tough spots in all 3 games.
Yeah, and I would never. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but man, if they were able to somehow pull out a win at Cincinnati, which that's going to be a hard chore, because Cincinnati is a very good team. They should have beaten Arkansas. They beat themselves. They had. I was watching that game. They had 4 penalties in the red zone on one trip, and I'm like, wow. But it sounds like they're still having those problems. But man, if Indiana could find that way and then go to Nebraska, where they are just reeling, and somehow get another win there in Lincoln and go 5-0, that would be the shocker beyond shockers. And then, like you said earlier, man, you got to just try to get by a Rutgers, a Maryland, a Purdue, and who knows what. That would be a very, very surprising season for this football team, but it would be hugely positively as surprising.
Well, I think that's. I mean, I don't want to get the cart before the horse, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I just think Cincinnati is such a critical game. And I don't even look, if Indiana got beat by Cincinnati, it's not the end of the world.
Nope.
Because you got Nebraska coming up next, which is a beatable football team. It's obvious. But at the same time, what I want to see is I want to see improvement in the areas of tackling, especially on the defensive side, stopping the run game for the other team to some degree, better than we have up to this, better than Indiana has up to this point. And I think the other thing, can the offense generate enough of their own run game to keep balance in this offense against a very good defensive football team? And I think Cincinnati is pretty good defensively.